So good morning and welcome to the latest episode of the new P&L, Principles and Leadership in Business podcast series. This is our first The New P&L To The Point episode for the new series. And for those new listeners not familiar with the new P&L To The Point format specifically, in this format I take a point or a concept or an opinion or a topic of particular interest to me at the moment, or one of those discussed with one of our recent guests in the new P&L Deep discussions. And I go into it in detail, offering a key action point listeners can take away and use in their business. So just before we get into this week's episode and the topic, a couple of quick things to note. Last week, we officially launched our new P&L executive coaching program for senior leaders, managers, and all of those who want to elevate their mindset, improve their decision-making, lift their performance to meet the challenges and opportunities of the age of AI. And the new P&L Executive Coaching Program is a 6-month one-to-one coaching engagement built specifically for senior leaders and managers to help them redesign their leadership and culture. Over 26 weekly sessions, we will together do the work that most leaders never have the opportunity to prioritize until the cost of not doing it becomes impossible to ignore. We'll cover purpose and identity, performance and AI mindset, and culture and communication, and a host of other leadership themes that are critical to building leaders who are confident and ready to thrive in the age of constant digital communication. If you are interested in discussing this more, just go to the show notes, connect with me on LinkedIn, or send an email and we can discuss this further. Okay, so on to today's topic. Today I'm discussing something that has not only come up in several conversations recently with guests, but also consistently features very high in the discussions I have with business leaders week in, week out. It's essentially the difference between the aspirational values and culture we claim to have within our organizations and the reality of what lives within many of our organizations day to day. And I should caveat this by saying that no organization is perfect or can have 100% adherence to the values, the purpose, and the principles that should underpin that culture. Organizational cultures are living, breathing, and ever-changing organisms. They change constantly as new people come into organizations and feed their personalities and their experience into the business. They change as external factors impact on a business and force it to sometimes compromise on those principles and values just to get through. And the values that underpin a business change because of weariness, neglect, and some within an organization who actively work against those cultures and those values. However, with all of that said, there are some incredible businesses I see out there in the world and some that I've worked with who fully commit with full intention to try and build the best business and the best culture by ensuring that all of those cultural elements of the business, the operational, the commercial, the innovation, production, marketing, and so on, that they're all underpinned by the same aligned set of values that are delivered and communicated across the organization with real clarity, coherence, and consistency, and they're also celebrated frequently. Then there are other organizations who fall into what I commonly refer to as businesses with vinyl values. What do I mean by that? Well, vinyl values are those values that are on the wall as you walk into an organization, and they might be behind the reception or the boardroom or in the team room. And they're supposed to demonstrate what that organization represents, all of the words and the values and the principles and the purpose that that organization represents. But unfortunately, what they often become is a substitute for, rather than a demonstration of the values that exist within that organization. So I call them vinyl values because the commitment to them is about as thin as the vinyl they're printed on. However, the effort to move these businesses that may be based on vinyl values from performative to purposeful when it comes to building that culture that is underpinned and understands the power of common collaborative values is not as hard as many may think. But fundamentally, it does require adherence to a basic but critical cultural equation. Commitment of leadership, plus clarity of vision, plus employee belief and collaboration over time. Time is the greatest healer, as they say, and time is also the greatest asset an organization has and needs. because so many cultural programs, their values and their purpose start with the very best of intentions and integrity. Very few, if we're honest, genuinely start from a cynical attempt to deceive employees. But without a structure in place and commitment over time and the milestones that are marked to make success, to check on that success and to check in on the pulse of the culture, the commitment to that cultural program and to building those values and embedding them within an organization naturally wanes. It's understandable if you don't have a framework to work around. There are lots of other things that get in the way day to day over time. So it exemplifies a kind of old adage, what gets measured gets managed. We have to have those values front and center of every business, not just talked about by management, but actively role modeled by leaders every day, showing up in the way the business is led, the way the vision is confirmed, the conversations that are had, the innovation that is delivered, the curiosity that is encouraged, and the higher performance that is built on collaboration, belonging, and a shared set of aspirations. This is where the real culture of a business is found, in those micro moments, and those small practical actions that we witness and experience across teams and across organizations every day. When we work and engage with each other in the meetings and the production lines and the conferences and the one-to-one conversations and so on. Because culture is not singular, it is cumulative. It is not passive, it is active and engaging. It is not dictated, it is determined by our actions, role modeled by our actions. It is found in the pockets of the organizations, the corners, the micro moments, and in the times that matter. That is where the real cultural pulse is. It is in these times that tell you what your brand is really built on, what it stands for, and what drives it. So what does that all mean for you and your business today? I'd like you to consider a quick takeaway that you could look at and use in your business tomorrow. If you're a leader, and by leader I mean anyone leading at any level within an organization, not just right at the top, without prompting your team and those you work with, ask them whether they are familiar with the values that are supposed to represent your business. Do they know what they are? And if they're able to name one or more of them, ask them how they think they show up day to day within your organization. What is that value or set of values that they know? What does that look like at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday morning to them? What does it look like in practice? And then you can ask your fellow employees, your team, those people that you work with, ask them what else could you do as an organization and as a leader in your role to help reinforce those values, to bring them alive, to get employees seeing them, valuing them, breathing them, and believing in them again. And then finally, ask them for a few ideas. Ask a few people for a few ideas of what they could do, what you could do, what your organization could do to bring those things alive. Then decide on the most important of these ideas, the most impactful, not just the easiest, but the most impactful, and then commit yourself and your leadership team to delivering on one or two of those values, one or two of those ideas, to help those aspirational values become lived values. Because nothing lives if it's not fed constantly, not us, and certainly not our values. Thank you once again for listening to this episode of the New P&L podcast and our first New P&L to the Point for this new series. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you've taken away some food for thought today. If you have enjoyed it, please do take a moment to rate us or review us. It all helps with our ratings and our rankings. And a reminder, as I said in the introduction, if you're interested in discussing our new executive leadership program for 2026, we have half a dozen places available in that leadership program. Just go to the show notes, click on the links or the email, and get in contact with us. So I'm Paul, host of the New P&L. Thank you once again for listening. Remember that the real culture lives in the micro moments within your organization, and I look forward to chatting to you in a couple of weeks' time.